Six men stole $5.875 million in 64 minutes, without firing a single shot. The FBI knew exactly who they were within 72 hours. 47 years later, only one person has ever served a day in prison for the robbery itself, and he wasn't even inside the building that night. This is the story of the largest cash robbery in American history, the largest cash robbery the FBI ever solved on day one, and still couldn't prosecute on day 17,000. It became one of the most famous heists in American film. But the real story has a body count. Hollywood never showed you. The man who planned it was never charged. The man who exposed it was murdered in his girlfriend's apartment 7 days later. And 8 other people connected to the crew turned up dead within 18 months. This is the story of how a Lucchese crime family associate robbed JFK Airport, killed almost everyone who could testify against him, and walked free until the day he died. And why the American legal system, even when it knew exactly who did it, couldn't do anything about it. To understand how 6 men walked into a federal cargo facility and walked out with almost $6 million, you have to start with the man who handed them the keys. His name was Louis Werner. He worked the cargo dock at Lufthansa's JFK terminal, married, 2 kids, mortgage on a modest house in Queens. By every outside measure, an ordinary man. But Werner had a gambling problem. By late 1978, he owed a New York bookmaker named Martin Krugman over $20,000, equivalent to nearly $100,000 today. He couldn't pay, and bookmakers don't write off debts. So Werner offered Krugman something better than money: information. Werner knew that Lufthansa flew in millions of dollars in untraceable US currency every single month. American servicemen stationed in West Germany, tourists, businessmen. They all exchanged dollars at German banks. That cash was then flown back to JFK in armored cargo containers and held in the Lufthansa vault before going back into circulation. The money was already in circulation, already untraceable. No serial number tracking, no marked bills. The minute it landed in that vault, it was indistinguishable from any other cash in America. Krugman listened, and Krugman knew exactly who would be interested. He took the information to a man who ran a small bar in Ozone Park called Robert's Lounge, a man who was a known associate of the Lucchese crime family, a man who had built his career on hijacking trucks at JFK Airport for over a decade. Jimmy the Gent Burke, the man behind one of the most efficient airport theft operations in American organized crime history, and the man whose story would eventually be turned into one of the most famous gangster movies ever made. But before any of that, before the movie, before the bodies, before the FBI bugs, Burke needed permission, and permission in his world came from one man, Paul Vario, Lucchese Capo, the man who controlled organized crime activity at JFK Airport and had just lost an entire cocaine shipment to federal agents. He needed cash, fast. Vario gave Burke the green light. For most of 1978, the planning happened inside Robert's Lounge in Queens. Burke assembled a crew of men he'd worked with for years: seasoned hijackers, triggermen, alarm specialists, men who knew how to enter a building, control a room, and walk out without leaving evidence. There was also a younger associate involved in the planning, a street hustler from Brooklyn who had been running with Burke since he was a teenager. His name was Henry Hill. Hill wouldn't be inside the building the night of the heist, but he would survive the next 18 months, which, as you'll see, made him almost the only person who could. The crew studied Werner's information for months. They learned the layout of cargo building 261. They learned the schedules of the night shift employees. They learned the security protocols. But there was one obstacle that even Werner hadn't been able to solve: the vault itself. The Lufthansa vault used a double-door system. To open the inner door, the outer door had to be completely closed. To open the outer door, the inner door had to be completely closed. If both doors were ever open at the same time, even for 1 second, a silent alarm would automatically transmit directly to the Port Authority police. The only person who knew the exact protocol to bypass that alarm without triggering it was the cargo supervisor on duty. His name was Rudi Eirik. He would not be opening that vault willingly. The crew settled on a date, the first Monday of December, a weeknight shift with minimal staffing, and by then, the cash deliveries from Germany would have built up to an estimated $2 million sitting inside the vault. That estimate would turn out to be very, very wrong. December 11th, 1978, 3:12 in the morning. A black Ford Econoline van pulls up to the loading dock at Lufthansa Cargo Building 261. 6 men step out wearing ski masks. They cut the perimeter padlock with bolt cutters. They use a key to enter the building. The key was Werner's. Within minutes, 10 Lufthansa employees are rounded up at gunpoint and handcuffed in the lunchroom. The crew knows every name, every schedule, every entrance and exit. They tell the employees that if anyone moves, anyone speaks, anyone tries to set off an alarm, their families will be killed. Supervisor Rudi Eirik is found on his break. He's pulled aside, held at gunpoint, and told to walk to the vault. At the vault, the masked men know exactly what to demand. Open the outer door, walk inside, wait for the door to fully close, then open the inner door. No deviations, no improvisation. Eirik does it perfectly. The alarm never sounds. Inside the vault, the crew expects to find around $2 million. What they actually find stops them cold. 72 cardboard cartons, stacked floor to ceiling. Each one weighs roughly 45 pounds. They contain neatly bundled, untraceable American currency that had been accumulating in the vault for weeks because of a delayed cash pickup. The crew loads the cartons into the van. They take a separate bag of jewelry. They lock the employees back in the lunchroom. They walk out the same door they came in. 64 minutes after they pulled up to the dock, the van pulls away. $5.875 million heavier. No alarms, no witnesses, no injuries. It was, at that exact moment, the most successful cash robbery in American history. It would stay that way for less than 72 hours. The plan for the van was simple. Drive it from JFK to a junkyard in New Jersey, controlled by the Gambino crime family. Crush it. Destroy every piece of evidence. The van would cease to exist. The man assigned to do it was Parnell Edwards, a musician, a small-time crook, a Burke loyalist nicknamed Stax. Stax didn't drive the van to New Jersey. Instead, he drove it to his girlfriend's apartment in Brooklyn. He went inside. He got high. He fell asleep. The van sat parked next to a fire hydrant in a no-parking zone for 48 hours. A New York City police officer wrote a parking ticket and called for a tow truck. When the tow truck arrived, the officer ran the plates. The van had been reported stolen the morning of the heist. He looked inside through the rear window and saw a single fingerprint smudge on the dashboard. He called it in. Within hours, FBI forensic teams pulled dozens of prints from the interior. They matched them to known associates of one Queens-based crime crew, a crew that operated out of a bar called Robert's Lounge, a crew run by a man named Jimmy Burke. Within 72 hours of the largest cash robbery in American history, the FBI knew the names of nearly every man who had been inside that building. What they didn't have was a single piece of evidence that could put any of them in a courtroom. And here's where the story stops being about a robbery and starts being about something much darker. Burke understood something most criminals don't. The FBI didn't need physical evidence to convict him. They needed witnesses. So Burke started eliminating witnesses. Stax Edwards, the man who left the van at the fire hydrant, was the first. 7 days after the heist, Burke and Tommy DeSimone walked into Edwards' girlfriend's apartment and shot him in the head. The hit was so soon after the robbery that the FBI later said Burke didn't even bother changing his routine. He drove home and went to bed. In January 1979, Martin Krugman, the bookmaker who had introduced Werner to Burke, disappeared. His car was abandoned. His body was never found. A few weeks later, Tommy DeSimone, the man who killed Stax Edwards, disappeared. According to multiple federal informants, his disappearance was retaliation from a different crime family for an unrelated murder. But the timing meant Burke was rid of another potential witness. In May 1979, Joe Buddha Manri and Robert Frenchie McMahon, two of the men inside the Lufthansa vault that night, were found shot execution style in a parked car in Brooklyn. A few months later, Paolo Licastri, another crew member, was found shot and partially burned in a vacant lot. That same year, Louis Cafora, known to the crew as Roast Beef, disappeared along with his wife. They had recently bought a pink Cadillac in cash, allegedly with Lufthansa money. Neither of their bodies has ever been found. The last to die was Angelo Sepe, one of the men who had walked into the Lufthansa vault. He was murdered in 1984. Within roughly 18 months of the heist, 8 people connected to the case were dead or missing. Several others died in the years that followed. The FBI was watching all of it. They had bugged Robert's lounge. They had bugged Burke's home phone. They had a wiretap on Angelo Sepe's car. They got fragments of conversations, references to the Brown case from Lufthansa, talk of money buried in cellars, vague accountings of what was owed and to whom. But fragments aren't probable cause, and probable cause is what you need for a search warrant. And without a search warrant, the cash couldn't be tied to anyone in court. The FBI watched Jimmy Burke murder almost everyone who could put him in a courtroom, and they couldn't legally do anything about it. Only one man was ever convicted for the Lufthansa heist itself. Louis Werner, the inside man, was identified by his co-worker Peter Grunwald, who had helped him pull off a smaller test robbery 2 years earlier and decided to cooperate with the FBI. Werner was convicted in 1979 and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He was offered a deal, reduce his sentence to almost nothing if he testified against Jimmy Burke. He refused. Burke himself was never charged for the Lufthansa heist, not in 1979, not in 1985, not in 1990. He was eventually convicted on unrelated charges, a college basketball point shaving scheme, and the murder of a drug dealer named Richard Eaton, and sentenced to life in prison. He died in a federal hospital in 1996. That should have been the end of the case. It wasn't. In 2014, a man named Vincent Asaro, an aging Bonanno crime family capo, then in his late 70s, was indicted by federal prosecutors for his alleged role in the Lufthansa heist. The case rested almost entirely on cooperator testimony. Asaro's own cousin, Gaspare Valenti, had spent years secretly recording him for the FBI. Joseph Massino, the former boss of the Bonanno family, agreed to testify against him from prison. The trial was held in Brooklyn in November 2015. The jury heard hours of secretly recorded conversations. They heard testimony about Assaro's alleged role in planning the heist and dividing the proceeds. They heard about a body buried under a basement in Queens. The defense had one strategy. Every witness was a cooperator. Every cooperator was getting reduced prison time in exchange for testifying. Every cooperator had a reason to lie. On November 12, 2015, the jury returned a verdict, not guilty, on every single count. Vincent Assaro walked out of the courthouse a free man. As he passed reporters on the front steps, he leaned over to his lawyer and made a joke that would become the most famous line of the entire case. "Don't let them see the body in the trunk." He was acquitted of robbing Lufthansa. He was acquitted of murder. He was acquitted of every charge in the indictment. He died in 2023, a free man, the last living person ever charged for the Lufthansa heist. The Lufthansa cargo terminal still operates today. The same building, the same flight paths, the same kind of currency shipments still come and go. The $5.875 million stolen on December 11, 1978, has never been recovered. Not a single bill, not a single piece of jewelry. Most people study this case for the murders, or the movie. The real lesson is about how American criminal law actually works. American prosecutions are not one with fingerprints or DNA. They're one with witnesses, people who saw, heard, or participated, cooperators who agreed to talk, co-defendants who flipped. When the witnesses are gone, the case is gone. Not because the crime didn't happen, not because the FBI doesn't know, but because the legal mechanism that makes prosecution possible has been physically removed from the equation. Jimmy Burke didn't beat the FBI. He understood the rules of evidence better than the people writing them. The American legal system needs witnesses to convict. Eliminate the witnesses, and you eliminate the law. $5.9 million, 8 bodies, 1 conviction, 47 years. The case file is still open. The money is still missing. Drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one. This is Unraveled Media. New breakdowns coming soon.